My name's Michael Lopez, and if you'd met me a year ago, you would have never guessed I'd end up here. I've always been the kind of guy who gets things done. Hardworking? Sure. Determined? Absolutely. And I've also made my fair share of bad decisions. For most of my adult life, I've been a drug dealer. Not exactly the kind of career you'd put on a resume, but it paid the bills and then some. I was good at it too, which, looking back, is probably the worst part. It started in high school. Back then, it was just a way to make some extra cash, and I was only selling weed here and there to friends and classmates. However, it didn't take long before I was selling to the whole school that turned into other schools, and then I started getting customers from all around town. People wanted the stuff, and I supplied it to them. Simple as that. By the time I hit my 20s, it wasn't just a side hustle anymore. It was my life. I had contacts, a network, and enough money to buy a modest house and keep my fridge stocked. But the truth is, it's not the kind of money that lets you sleep easy at night. I had to maintain a low profile, and I couldn't afford to trust anybody. I'd like to think I'm a good person at heart, although I've never been the friendliest guy around. I'm not one to go out of my way to make small talk or do favors unless there's a reason. And I've often let people's kindness or patience slip by without a second thought. It's not that I don't care. I do, in my own way, but I've always been so focused on what's right in front of me that I don't stop to think about the people standing beside me. It's a flaw, I'll admit that much, but it's one I've learned to live with, or at least I thought I had. Then came the day everything changed. I was driving back home after picking up a new supply. It was a typical run, nothing out of the ordinary, until I saw the flashing red and blue lights in my rearview mirror. My stomach dropped. I wasn't even speeding, at least not by much. But there he was, a state trooper pulling me over on the highway. As I fumbled for my license and registration, my mind raced through every worst-case scenario. What if he asked to search the car? What if he called for a K-9 unit? My palms were slick with sweat, and I could barely keep my hands steady as I handed him my paperwork. The officer took it without a word and walked back to his cruiser, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I watched him in the rearview mirror, his silhouette illuminated by the glow of his dashboard. The minutes stretched on forever as he sat there, probably running my plates and checking for any outstanding warrants. I could feel my pulse in my ears, each second amplifying my anxiety. Did I look suspicious? Was he going to call for backup? My breathing grew shallow as I tried to keep calm. Then, just as I thought I might lose it, I saw him step out of the car and walk back toward me. The officer leaned down to my window, handing back my license and registration.
"You were going a little fast back there.
He said, his tone flat but not unfriendly.
Just make sure you watch your speed, all right?"
I nodded quickly, my voice catching in my throat. "Yes, sir. Thank you." He tapped the roof of my car and walked away, his cruiser pulling back onto the highway a few seconds later. I sat there for a moment, staring at my trembling hands on the steering wheel. He hadn't asked to search the car. He hadn't even seemed suspicious. For all I knew, he was just bored and looking to pass the time with a routine stop. But it didn't matter. That close call felt like the universe shaking me awake, reminding me how quickly everything could fall apart if I kept playing this game. I should have felt relieved, but all I felt was dread. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep playing the odds and hoping I wouldn't get caught. It wasn't just about me anymore. If I went down, the people around me would suffer too. I told myself that as soon as I sold off the rest of my supply, I'd be done for good. Quitting wasn't easy. It's not like I could walk into the nearest fast food joint and apply for a shift manager position. My resume was non-existent, and my skills, at least the ones I could admit to, weren't exactly in high demand. But I kept looking, scrolling through job boards late at night when I should have been sleeping. Then I found it. The ad popped up on a site I'd never heard of before. Janitor needed, St. Augustine's Catholic School, $80 per hour, immediate start. At first, I thought it had to be a scam. $80 an hour for cleaning classrooms? Come on. But the more I read, the more legitimate it seemed. The school's name checked out. The contact information looked real. And there wasn't anything about sending money up front or providing my bank account details. I figured it was worth a shot, so I filled out the online application. It only asked for the basics: name, phone number, availability. No mention of a background check, which was a relief. I hit submit, expecting to hear nothing back. That's how these things seem to go. But less than an hour later, my phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm and professional, asking me a few simple questions about my availability and whether I'd be okay working nights. I answered honestly, trying not to sound too eager. Before I knew it, they offered me the job. Just like that.
Can you start tomorrow night?
The woman asked. Her tone was polite but firm, like she wasn't really asking. Yeah, I can, I said, still trying to process how fast everything was happening.
Great, we'll see you then.
She hung up before I could ask any questions. For a moment, I just stared at my phone, the doubt creeping in. No interview, no paperwork, no nothing. It didn't feel right. But $80 an hour was too good to pass up, and I told myself that maybe, just maybe, this was the break I'd been looking for. Even as I tried to convince myself, though, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just signed up for something far stranger than I realized. The night before my first shift, I barely slept. My mind kept circling back to the phone call and the ease with which I was hired. It felt surreal, too easy. I stayed up late pacing my living room, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating the job ad I'd bookmarked. I reread it a dozen times, looking for anything I might have missed, but it was just as straightforward as it had been the first time. I tried to shake off the unease, reminding myself that I'd taken a leap of faith to find a new path. This was just another step forward. The day of my first shift was no better. I spent most of it on edge, second-guessing myself and everything I'd agreed to. I tried to distract myself by running errands and cleaning up around the house, but nothing seemed to quiet the nagging voice in the back of my head. It was like I was waiting for something to go wrong before I'd even shown up. When the evening rolled around, I got dressed in plain black pants and a button-up shirt. It felt like the kind of outfit a janitor might wear, though I realized I had no idea what to expect. I grabbed my keys, checked the clock, and left the house with a mix of anticipation and dread knotting in my stomach. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of St. Augustine's Catholic School, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the building bathed in the dim orange glow of the streetlights. The school itself was larger than I'd imagined, its brick facade towering against the night sky. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel as I stared at the front entrance. The feeling of unease I'd been wrestling with all day was back, stronger than ever, but I'd made it this far. There was no turning back now. I stepped out of the car, the cool evening air prickling against my skin, and walked toward the front doors. They swung open just as I reached them, and a woman in a long, dark habit stepped out. She was taller than I expected, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. For a moment, I was caught off guard. I hadn't expected to meet a nun, let alone one who looked like she ran the place.
Mr. Lopez?
She asked, her voice calm but commanding. Yeah, that's me, I replied, trying to mask my nerves.
I'm Sister Agnes, the principal here at St. Augustine's. Thank you for coming, Mr. Lopez. Follow me, please.
I followed her through the dimly lit halls, the sound of our footsteps echoing off the tile floors. The school was quiet, almost eerily so, and the air carried a faint scent of cleaning supplies and old wood. Sister Agnes didn't say much as we walked, only glancing back occasionally to make sure I was keeping up. Finally, we stopped outside a small office. She turned to face me, her expression softening slightly.
I'll be honest with you, Mr. Lopez. This job isn't for everyone. We've had a hard time keeping night staff, which is why we pay as well as we do. There are expectations here, rules. You'll be given a list tonight, and I'll expect you to follow them to the letter. Do you understand?
Yeah, sure, I said, though her words left me more uneasy than reassured.
Good. Now let's make it official.
After signing a few forms and receiving a set of keys, I was officially hired. Sister Agnes led me down another hallway and stopped in front of a large steel door. She knocked twice, and after a moment, it opened to reveal a man in his late 40s. He was stocky, with graying hair and a warm, friendly smile that contrasted sharply with the somber atmosphere of the school.
This is Jerry. He's your partner for the night shifts. He'll help you get up to speed.
Jerry extended a hand, which I shook hesitantly.
Nice to meet you, Michael. Don't worry, we'll get you sorted out in no time.
His easy demeanor was a welcome change from Sister Agnes's sternness, but it didn't completely erase the unease simmering in the back of my mind. As I followed him into the janitor's closet to start my first shift, I couldn't help but wonder what exactly I'd gotten myself into. Once inside the janitor's closet, Jerry leaned against a shelf stacked with cleaning supplies and studied me for a moment.
So, Michael, let me give it to you straight. This isn't your run-of-the-mill janitor job. This place, it's different.
Different how? I asked, my unease growing. Jerry sighed, crossing his arms.
St. Augustine's has its quirks. Paranormal quirks, if you catch my drift. I'm talking about stuff you won't believe until you see it with your own eyes. Most of it's harmless, but if you're not careful, it can get complicated.
I stared at him, half expecting him to crack a smile and tell me it was all a joke, but his expression stayed serious. "You're not messing with me, are you?" I asked.
Wish I was, but don't worry. As long as you follow the rules, you should be fine.
Jerry reached into a drawer and pulled out a laminated sheet of paper.
Read these over and memorize them.
He said, handing it to me. I scanned the list. There were 10 rules in total. Rule 1. You and your partner must be inside the janitor's closet by the time your shift starts at 7:30 p.m. Wait in the closet for 1 minute until 7:31 p.m. before it is safe to leave. This also applies to Rule 2 when beginning inspections and Rule 3 when responding to phone calls. Only leave the janitor's closet for inspections and responding to calls. Rule 2. It is required of you to make 3 separate rounds throughout the night, inspecting all 3 levels of the school. The first inspection at the start of the shift, the second at 11 p.m., the third at 2 a.m. You and your partner must complete each inspection and return to the janitor's closet within an hour. Be careful not to go too fast or cut corners. It will upset them. Rule 3. When the phone rings, always answer it. If the voice on the other line gives you a specific room number, go to the room immediately. Only one of you may go, the other must stay in the janitor's closet. If the phone rings within 30 minutes of the next inspection, take note of the room number, wait for the next inspection, then go to the room immediately. Rule 4. While in the gym or cafeteria, you may encounter a group of children. Ignore them and never make eye contact. If they ask to play a game, you must respond with these exact words. "I'd love to, but I'm already playing the cleaning game, maybe another time." Do not acknowledge them for the rest of the night. The children like to be sneaky and they will try to trick you. If you hear laughter, leave the area immediately. Rule 5. During inspections, ensure that all classroom doors are shut and locked. Failure to do so could be fatal. If you find a door wide open, you must go inside the room and clean it. Shut the door and lock it when you are finished. If the door closes on you while cleaning, you have 30 seconds to find a desk and hide under it. Close your eyes, don't move, and don't make any sound. You'll know when it leaves. Rule 6. The crucifixes in the hallways must remain upright at all times. If you find one on the floor, hang it back up immediately. If you find one hanging upside down, do not go near it. Immediately inform your partner, head to the janitor's closet, and call the school's priest. Remain in the janitor's closet until he arrives. Rule 7. Ignore any voices or sounds you may hear from the classrooms or hallways. If the voices start talking directly to you, do not respond. If you sense that you're being followed, remain calm and continue what you're doing. Do not look behind you. It should be gone soon. Rule 8. Never enter the basement alone. Always inspect the basement with your partner. If you're ever told to check the basement by the voice over the phone, hang up and immediately call the school's priest. Remain in the janitor's closet until he arrives. Rule 9. If the lights start to flicker, immediately stop what you're doing and get back to the janitor's closet before the lights go out. In the event you don't make it back in time, go to the detention room and stay quietly seated at one of the desks for the remainder of your shift. Rule 10. Don't be caught running in the hallways. "So, what's this all supposed to mean?" I asked, holding up the sheet. Jerry's expression was grim.
Exactly what it says. Stick to the rules and you'll make it through the night in one piece. Break them and, well, let's just say it's better if you don't find out.
He reached into a nearby cabinet and pulled out a flashlight and a walkie-talkie, handing them to me.
She'll need these. The flashlight's for when the power cuts out, and trust me, it will. The walkie-talkies to stay in touch. If anything happens, call me right away. Don't try to handle things on your own.
I took the items, the weight of the flashlight grounding me slightly. "Thanks," I muttered, clipping the walkie-talkie to my belt. Jerry nodded, his expression softening slightly.
Keep these on you at all times. They might just save your life. And remember, follow the rules, Michael. They're there for a reason.
The shift began promptly at 7:30 p.m., just like the rules said. Jerry and I stayed in the janitor's closet until the clock on the wall ticked over to 7:31 p.m. The small room was filled with a faint hum of the overhead light, and the smell of industrial cleaner hung in the air. Jerry glanced at his watch and gave me a nod.
All right, time to get moving. First inspection.
He opened the door, and the quiet of the hallway seemed to swallow us whole. The school was dark, with only a few emergency lights casting faint pools of illumination. The long corridors stretched out like tunnels, the tiles gleaming faintly under the dim light. Our footsteps echoed as we moved, Jerry leading the way. "So, what exactly am I looking for on these inspections?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady.
Doors. Check every door, make sure it's locked. If it's open, we follow the rules.
The first floor was uneventful, though the oppressive silence of the building made every sound feel louder than it was. We passed by classrooms, their windows dark and lifeless, and I felt a shiver run down my spine as we walked by the gym.
You okay?
Jerry asked, glancing back at me. "Yeah," I lied, gripping the flashlight a little tighter. By the time we finished the first floor, my nerves had settled just enough to convince myself this wasn't so bad. The quiet halls felt less oppressive now, though I still found myself glancing over my shoulder every so often. As we approached the stairs to the second floor, Jerry slowed his pace and looked back at me, his expression unreadable. Jerry stopped in his tracks and turned to me, his face serious.
Stay close, Michael, and no matter what happens, keep your pace steady. Running just makes things worse.
I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest as we moved deeper into the shadows. The second floor was much like the first, dimly lit, silent, and unsettling. The air felt heavier here, like the building itself was holding its breath. Jerry led the way, shining his flashlight at each door we passed, rattling the knobs to ensure they were locked. Then we reached room 208. The door was wide open, the darkness inside seeming to spill out into the hallway. Jerry froze, his flashlight beam fixed on the doorway.
That shouldn't be open.
"What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jerry took a deep breath.
Well, we follow the rules. Come on.
He stepped inside, and I followed, the unease in my stomach twisting tighter with each step. The room smelled faintly of chalk and stale air. Desks were arranged in neat rows, and the faint outline of a crucifix hung above the blackboard. Jerry swept his flashlight across the room, his movements deliberate. Then the beam landed on the chalkboard. In bold white letters, scrawled in jagged handwriting, were the words, "Welcome, Michael." My breath caught in my throat. "What the hell?" Jerry's jaw tightened. He didn't look surprised, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, fear maybe, or resignation.
Stay calm. It's just trying to get to you. Don't let it.
"It?" I asked, but Jerry didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the chalkboard, grabbed an eraser, and wiped the words away in one swift motion.
Come on, let's finish the inspection and get out of here.
I didn't argue. As we stepped back into the hallway, I glanced over my shoulder at the darkened room. The open door seemed to loom behind us, watching. I reached out and firmly shut it, the faint click of the lock echoing in the silence. Jerry gave me a sideways look as I tightened my grip on the flashlight.
Relax, kid. You keep looking over your shoulder like that and it'll drive you crazy. Focus on what's in front of you. That's all that matters.
I nodded, swallowing hard, and forced myself to keep my eyes forward as we moved down the hallway. Still, the unease lingered, crawling up my spine with every step. Jerry glanced at his watch, his brow furrowing slightly.
All right, we're almost done with this first inspection. We've got the gym, the cafeteria, and the basement left to check.
I swallowed again at the mention of the basement. "And how much time do we have?" I asked.
40 minutes. Plenty if we don't waste it. Come on.
He started walking briskly, his flashlight sweeping ahead of him as I tried to match his pace.
The gym and cafeteria are usually quiet, but the basement, well, you'll see,
he added, his voice dropping slightly at the end. I wasn't sure if it was meant to reassure me, but it did the opposite. We reached the cafeteria first. The large open space felt even larger in the dim light, the rows of empty tables and chairs casting long, distorted shadows. Jerry methodically swept his flashlight across the room, checking every corner. The silence was so profound that I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator units from the kitchen area.
Looks fine, let's move on.
The gym was next. As soon as we stepped through the heavy double doors, the air felt different, thicker somehow. The expansive room was eerily quiet, the faint sound of our footsteps swallowed by the polished wooden floor. Jerry's flashlight beam danced across the bleachers and the basketball hoops hanging from the ceiling. Then I saw them. A group of children stood in the center of the gym, their backs to us. They looked almost like shadows, their forms faintly illuminated by the emergency lights overhead. My heart jumped into my throat as I froze in place. "Jerry," I whispered, my voice trembling.
I see them. Remember the rules. Don't engage, don't make eye contact.
The children didn't move. They stood perfectly still, as though they were waiting for something. One of them began to hum, the haunting melody echoing softly through the empty gym. Another giggled, the sound sharp and jarring against the silence.
Let's go.
Jerry whispered, grabbing my arm. He guided me carefully toward the exit, keeping his flashlight pointed at the ground.
Don't look back.
I didn't. Even as the humming grew louder and the giggles turned into laughter, I kept my eyes forward, my breath shallow and quick. We didn't stop until we were back in the hallway. The gym doors closed firmly behind us. "What the hell was that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper.
They like to play games. You did good, though. Follow the rules and you'll be fine.
Jerry glanced at his watch, the glow from his flashlight catching the numbers.
We've got 20 minutes to check the basement and get back to the janitor's closet.
I felt my stomach tighten at the mention of the basement. And the basement? Is it as bad as it sounds? I asked hesitantly.
Depends on the night. Most of the time, it's just cold and creepy. But remember what the rules say. We stick together. Never go down there alone, no matter what.
His words didn't help ease my nerves, but I nodded. "Got it,"
All right, let's get moving.
Jerry said, leading the way toward the basement stairs. The sound of our footsteps echoed eerily in the empty hallway, growing softer as we approached the heavy metal door at the end. Jerry pulled out a key, unlocked the door, and pushed it open with a loud creak that seemed to echo forever. The staircase leading down was narrow, and the faint light from the hallway barely reached beyond the first few steps. The air grew colder with each step we descended, carrying a damp, earthy smell that made my skin crawl. Jerry moved cautiously, his flashlight cutting through the heavy darkness.
Keep your light steady and don't fall behind.
I nodded, gripping my own flashlight tightly as we reached the bottom. The basement was a maze of old storage rooms and winding hallways. The walls were lined with shelves stacked high with boxes, janitorial supplies, and forgotten equipment. The silence down here felt different, oppressive, almost alive. As we walked, I started to hear faint murmurs. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but the whispers grew clearer with each step. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a low, indecipherable chorus of voices. "Jerry," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Do you hear that?" He stopped and turned to me, his expression serious.
Ignore it. They're just trying to mess with you. Don't engage.
I swallowed hard, nodding as we continued forward. The whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder, more insistent. I couldn't make out any words, but the tone felt mocking, almost taunting. My hands were shaking, and I had to force myself to keep moving. Jerry led us to a large utility room at the far end of the basement. He checked the door, ensuring it was locked before turning back to me.
That's the last one down here. Let's head back.
The voices followed us as we retraced our steps, growing softer but never completely fading. I kept my eyes fixed on Jerry's back, refusing to look around. By the time we reached the stairs, my chest felt tight, and my breaths were shallow. We climbed the steps quickly, the cold air of the basement giving way to the relatively warmer atmosphere of the hallway above. Jerry shut the door firmly behind us, locking it with a practiced motion. The whispers disappeared the moment the door closed.
You did good, kid. Now let's get back to the closet.
We reached the janitor's closet with a few minutes to spare. Jerry shut the door behind us and leaned against the counter, checking his watch again.
Not bad for your first inspection.
He said, giving me a small nod of approval.
But going forward, we have to split up for these inspections.
I blinked at him, my grip on the flashlight tightening. What? Why? Jerry shrugged.
It's protocol. I only came with you because it was your first inspection. Usually we split up and handle our part of the inspection separately. It's faster that way and honestly, safer too.
Safer? I repeated, my stomach twisting. How is splitting up safer? He gave me a pointed look.
The more ground we cover, the less chance they have to mess with us. Sticking together gives them too much time to focus. Splitting up keeps things moving and spreads their attention.
I nodded hesitantly, still uneasy. Jerry's expression softened slightly.
Don't worry, though. We always inspect the basement together, no exceptions. The rules are clear about that. You'll never have to go down there alone.
His reassurance helped, but the weight of the situation still pressed on me. I glanced at the laminated sheet of rules again, the words blurring slightly as my mind raced.
If you need anything, use the walkie. You're not on your own out there. We've got each other's backs. Just stick to the rules and you'll be fine.
We sat in the janitor's closet, waiting for the next inspection at 11 p.m. The hum of the overhead light was the only sound, and I found myself staring at the clock, counting down the minutes. At exactly 11 p.m., the pounding started. It was violent, shaking the door on its hinges. The sharp, rhythmic thuds echoed through the small room, making my pulse skyrocket. Then, the voices followed. They weren't human, not even close. Low, guttural growls mixed with distorted whispers that crawled under my skin like insects. I looked at Jerry, my eyes wide. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and watched the clock.
Don't worry, this happens sometimes. As long as we wait a full minute like Rule 1 says, we'll be fine.
I swallowed hard and nodded, though every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. The pounding grew louder, more insistent, and I could swear I heard my own name whispered among the noise. Then, as abruptly as it started, it stopped. The silence that followed was almost worse. Jerry exhaled and gave me a small grin.
See? Nothing to it.
I forced out a shaky breath and nodded. Yeah, nothing to it. He pushed off the counter and grabbed his flashlight.
All right, let's get to it. Second inspection.
I followed him out, my hands still trembling as I gripped the walkie-talkie tightly. The rules were starting to make a lot more sense now. As Jerry and I left the closet, he said,
Like I was saying earlier, we have to split up now. How about you do the first floor this time and I can inspect the second floor? I'll let you decide if you'd rather inspect the gym or cafeteria, and I'll do the other. Then we meet at the top of the basement stairs to finish the inspection together. Sound like a plan?
I hesitated, gripping my flashlight tighter as I thought about my options. Neither the gym nor the cafeteria sat well with me after what we'd encountered earlier, but I had to pick my poison. I'll take the cafeteria, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. The memory of those children in the gym still lingered, and I wasn't ready to deal with them again, if they even left. Jerry nodded approvingly.
Good choice. Just remember the rule about them trying to trick you. If you hear anything weird, stick to the rules.
I forced a nod, though my stomach twisted at the thought. Got it,
All right.
Jerry said, offering me a reassuring pat on the shoulder.
Check all the doors, keep your eyes open, and remember, follow the rules.
I nodded again, and without another word, we split up. My heart pounded in my chest, and I had to remind myself to breathe. Halfway through my inspection, I heard it. The soft sound of something scraping against the floor. I froze. The beam of my flashlight flickered slightly as I aimed it toward the source of the noise. A small chair, positioned neatly near one of the tables, slowly dragged itself an inch to the left. My pulse skyrocketed. I didn't look away, but I didn't react either. Ignore it. Just ignore it. I finished locking the last set of doors and turned back toward the exit when I heard it again. Soft, giggling, followed by a whisper.
Do you wanna play?
I squeezed my eyes shut for a brief second before forcing a smile. I'd love to, but I'm already playing the cleaning game. Maybe another time, I said, the words feeling unnatural as they left my mouth. The silence stretched out for a long moment, and I dared not look in the direction the voice came from.
I bet you'll die.
The voice finally whispered, followed by more giggles. I kept my eyes forward, walking steadily toward the exit without glancing back. As I reached the doorway, I heard the faint sound of something running across the room behind me, quick, darting footsteps. I resisted the urge to run. Once I stepped into the hallway, I shut the door firmly behind me, locking it without hesitation. My hands were trembling as I clicked the lock into place, and I took a deep breath to steady myself.
Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Jerry's voice crackled over the walkie-talkie, making me jump. Cafeteria's done, I replied, my voice slightly shaky. Everything's locked up.
Good. Meet me at the basement stairs.
I took one last glance at the cafeteria doors and walked quickly down the hall, the cold air prickling against my skin. Jerry was already waiting for me at the basement entrance, his flashlight trained on the heavy door. He looked up as I approached and gave me a small nod.
Everything good?
He asked. Yeah, I said, though I wasn't sure how true that was. He chuckled.
You'll get used to it. Ready?
I nodded, and together we descended into the basement once again. The air grew colder with each step, and that same damp smell greeted us as we reached the bottom. This time, I wasn't just scared, I was alert, watching, listening, and that's when I heard it, the faint sound of something breathing in the darkness just beyond the flashlight's reach. Jerry stopped beside me and whispered,
Whatever you do, Michael, don't stop moving and don't turn off your light.
We moved deeper into the basement, the thick, musty air wrapping around us like a heavy blanket. The beams of our flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating long, narrow corridors lined with rusting pipes and old storage rooms. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, twisting and shifting as if they had a life of their own. Jerry walked a few steps ahead, his flashlight steady and unwavering. I did my best to match his pace, keeping my breathing even despite the anxiety clawing at my chest. Every creak of the floor, every distant drip of water felt magnified in the oppressive silence. As we passed the first storage room, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, something small and fast skittering deeper into the darkness. I stiffened, but Jerry didn't react, so I kept moving.
The basement's always the worst. It's where they're strongest.
Jerry muttered, his voice low but calm. I swallowed hard, not wanting to ask what exactly they were. My fingers twitched against the handle of my flashlight, and I made sure to stay close to Jerry's side. We reached the first checkpoint, an old boiler room at the far end of the hallway. Jerry tested the handle, locked. He nodded approvingly, marking it off on the clipboard he carried. As we turned to leave, a soft, shuffling sound echoed from inside the room. I froze. Did you hear that? I whispered. Jerry didn't look at me.
Ignore it. It's just trying to get your attention.
I kept my eyes fixed ahead, following Jerry back down the hall. But the sound persisted, growing louder, more insistent, like something scraping against the door from the inside. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. We reached the next checkpoint, a utility closet filled with old janitorial supplies. Jerry checked the door, nodded, and moved on. As we rounded the next corner, the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. I could see my breath in the beam of my flashlight, misting in the stale air. I shivered involuntarily.
Almost done,
Jerry said, but his voice sounded different, tense. That's when the whispers started again. Low, breathy voices, murmuring just beyond the range of my hearing. It sounded like they were coming from everywhere, behind us, ahead of us, inside the walls. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment and forced my feet to move, pushing forward with renewed determination. The whispers followed, teasing, calling, but I didn't dare acknowledge them. As we neared the last checkpoint, a locked metal door labeled Storage B, Jerry came to an abrupt halt. His flashlight beam revealed something that made my stomach drop. The door was wide open, my breath hitched in my throat. "What do we do?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Jerry's jaw tightened.
We follow the rules. We go in and we clean.
I didn't move. "Jerry, I don't..." He turned to me, his eyes serious.
Michael, if we don't follow the rules, we won't make it out. We go in, we clean, we leave. That's it.
I swallowed and nodded. We stepped inside. The room was filled with rows of metal shelves stacked with dusty textbooks, old school supplies, and forgotten relics from decades past. The air inside was thick with mildew and something else. Something rotten. I tried to focus on the task at hand, grabbing a nearby broom and sweeping the dust from the floor in slow, deliberate strokes. Jerry wiped down the shelves, his movements brisk and efficient. A faint rustling sound echoed from the back of the room. I glanced up, my heart hammering. A dark shape shifted behind the shelves, too fast to see clearly, but there. "Jerry," I whispered.
Keep cleaning.
He said, without looking up. I forced myself to continue sweeping, my hands trembling with every movement. The rustling grew louder, closer. Then, with a deafening slam, the door shut behind us. My heart leapt into my throat as Jerry's head snapped toward the sound. Jerry dropped his rag and grabbed my arm.
Under the desk.
He hissed. I didn't hesitate. We scrambled beneath a nearby desk, crouching low. Rule 5 flashing through my mind. If the door closes, hide immediately.
Eyes closed. Don't move.
Jerry whispered, his voice deadly serious. I shut my eyes tight, pressing myself against the cold metal as the growling grew louder, filling the entire room. Then I heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Pacing between the shelves. They stopped directly in front of our hiding spot. The air turned suffocating, thick with the scent of rot and decay. My pulse thundered in my ears. I clenched my fists, trying not to breathe too loudly. Seconds stretched into eternity. A low, ragged breath rasped just inches from where I hid. The scent of mildew and something far worse filled my nostrils, making my stomach churn. My muscles screamed to move, to run, but I held firm, frozen in fear. Then, there was a soft tap against the desk. Once, twice, like long, bony fingers drumming against the wood. I heard Jerry exhale slowly, barely a whisper of air. The tapping stopped, replaced by a slow, heavy dragging sound. Something scraping across the floor and moving away. My chest ached from holding my breath, but I dared not move. Just when I thought it was over, the footsteps suddenly rushed forward, slamming into the desk with a force that rattled the entire structure. I bit down on my lip to keep from screaming, my nails digging into my palms. Then, silence. I counted the seconds in my head, each one stretching longer than the last. Finally, Jerry tapped my arm, the signal we were waiting for.
We're good.
I opened my eyes slowly, my hands shaking as we crawled out from under the desk. The air still felt heavy, but the overwhelming sense of danger had lifted. Without a word, Jerry locked the door behind us, his face pale but composed. We didn't speak as we made our way back to the basement stairs, listening for any lingering sounds in the darkness. Once we reached the top, Jerry let out a slow breath and gave me a small, grim smile.
Not bad, kid. You handled yourself well. Good job.
I let out a shaky laugh, wiping sweat from my brow. Yeah. Thanks, I said, unsure of myself.
Come on, let's get back to the closet before anything else decides to test us.
As we walked back down the hallway, the fluorescent lights flickering above, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching us, lurking just out of sight. When we finally reached the janitor's closet door, a sudden chilling sound echoed down the corridor. Rapid, heavy footsteps. My heart jumped into my throat.
Move!
Jerry hissed, pushing me forward. We scrambled inside the closet and slammed the door shut just as the pounding hit. The door rattled violently as if something massive was throwing itself against it. The force reverberated through the walls, shelves shaking and supplies tumbling to the floor. Then the screaming started. It wasn't human. A guttural, distorted cacophony of voices layered on top of each other, screaming our names and words I didn't understand. The sound was deafening, and I pressed my back against the shelves, feeling my legs tremble beneath me. My breath hitched, and I clenched my fists, squeezing my eyes shut. The voices grew more erratic, whispering things I couldn't comprehend, ancient words, chilling laughter, and fragmented phrases that made my skin crawl. The pounding intensified, and I could hear something scratching against the wood, nails or claws, dragging slowly in long, deliberate strokes. Each scrape sent a shiver down my spine, my heart hammering against my chest. My breath caught in my throat, and I forced myself to stay still, gripping the edge of the shelf behind me so hard my knuckles ached. Jerry's expression, usually calm and collected, had shifted. He stared at the door with furrowed brows, his jaw set tight. It was clear this wasn't something he had anticipated. Then, as abruptly as the noise started, the room fell silent. The air inside the closet was thick with tension. My ears were still ringing from the relentless banging, and for a moment, I half expected it to start up again. The walls felt too thin, like whatever was out there could burst through at any second. I looked over at Jerry, who was still watching the door, his expression unreadable.
It's done.
He muttered, more to himself than to me. I wiped the sweat from my brow and swallowed hard. Is that normal? I asked, my voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. Jerry sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. The weariness etched deep into his face.
Well, lately? Yeah, I suppose. Over these past few months, it's been different. More violent, more unpredictable. It's like something's feeding off the school, getting stronger.
Jerry exhaled slowly, rubbing his hands together before leaning back against the wall.
Michael, there's something you need to know. This job, it was different before. I had a partner for 8 years, Tony. He was smart, cautious, knew the rules better than anyone. We had a routine, and we never broke it.
He paused, his gaze distant, as if lost in a memory.
Then one night, well, I don't know for sure what happened. This all still just doesn't make sense to me. We'd been doing this job for 8 years together. We had split up like always. I was finishing my rounds on the second floor when I started hearing them. The voices. They were whispering, giggling, taunting me. "Where's Tony?" they kept saying over and over again. I thought it was another one of their tricks, something new they were trying. But then I heard the screaming. I knew it could have just been another illusion, something trying to lure me into breaking protocol. But when I got to the gym doors and saw what was happening to him, I knew this wasn't just a trick.
He stared at the floor, shaking his head.
I don't know what they did to him, Michael. I barely even saw it. Just shapes, dark, shifting, clawing at him. And the laughter. It wasn't just coming from the children anymore, it was something worse, something bigger. I felt it watching me. I knew if I stepped inside that gym, I wasn't making it out either. So I ran. I ran straight back to the janitor's closet and called Father Davis. I just knew that whatever had Tony, it wasn't letting him go.
Jerry let out a slow breath before continuing.
Father Davis showed up about 10 minutes later. He didn't ask questions, didn't hesitate. He just told me to take him to the gym. I was hoping, praying, that Tony was still okay. That maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. But when we got there, the gym was silent. No voices, no laughter. Tony was standing in the center of the court, perfectly still, back to us. I called his name. No response. Then Father Davis put a hand on my shoulder, stopping me from going any closer. Something about the way Tony was standing, it wasn't right. It was like he wasn't breathing, like he wasn't even in his own body anymore. And then, he turned his head, just his head, all the way around to face us. His body never moved. His eyes, they weren't his. They were black, not just the pupils, the whole damn eye, like staring into something hollow, empty. But I swear, Michael, something was inside him, watching, smiling.
A cold dread settled over me. What do you mean? So what happened? Jerry took a deep breath.
Well, Father Davis started praying. That's when Tony, or whatever was wearing him, opened his mouth, and the children started laughing again. But they weren't in the gym. The sound was coming from inside him. Then the lights went out. The gym was swallowed in darkness, and for a moment the only sound was from Father Davis as he continued his prayer. Then, from the void, a whisper.
You're too late.
Father Davis didn't stop. His voice grew stronger, commanding, reciting the Latin prayers with urgency. The laughter inside Tony's mouth warped into something else, a guttural, rasping growl. Then a violent, ear-piercing scream tore through the gym, so loud and unnatural that I slapped my hands over my ears. Then the lights flickered back on. Tony was no longer in the center of the gym. He was on the ceiling. His body hung upside down, arms spread wide like a grotesque marionette tangled in invisible strings. His head twisted at an impossible angle, and from his gaping mouth, black liquid oozed onto the polished floor below. The moment his eyes locked onto us, the lights flickered again, and his body twitched violently like something inside him was trying to break free. Tony's body convulsed as Father Davis finished praying. Then, as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. Tony dropped from the ceiling, hitting the floor with a sickening thud. The laughter was gone. The darkness had lifted. Only silence. And that was the last time I saw him. After that, the school wouldn't let the details get out. We buried Tony's story, just like we buried him.
Jerry's recount of his former partner left me in a daze, my mind racing with questions I couldn't even begin to untangle. My thoughts blurred together. Tony, the rules, the voices. I felt like I had been dropped into something far bigger than just a job, something I had no business being a part of. My hands felt cold, my grip on the flashlight tightening instinctively. "I'm sorry about Tony," I finally said, though the words felt hollow in my mouth. I wanted to say more, to ask how Jerry kept going after something like that, but another question forced its way out instead. What is this place? Why are we even here? Why are you still here after watching your partner die? The silence stretched between us for a moment. the weight of everything pressing down on my chest like a vice. I could see it in Jerry's face. He wasn't just holding back details, he was holding back something heavier, something worse. Jerry let out a slow breath, rubbing his temples before leaning forward.
This place, St. Augustine's, it's not just haunted, Michael. It's cursed. And whatever is here, it isn't just lingering spirits. It's something demonic, something ancient.
I felt my stomach twist. Ancient? What do you mean? Jerry nodded.
The school was built over something that should have stayed buried. The land wasn't supposed to be used, but someone ignored that. When the school first opened, weird things started happening almost immediately. Students went missing, teachers had breakdowns, priests performed exorcisms behind closed doors, but it never stopped.
So, the rules, they aren't just to protect us?
No, they're to keep it contained. Over time, the school figured out that as long as certain routines were followed, whatever is here stays mostly dormant. That's where we come in, the janitors. We're not just here to clean, we're here to keep the system in place. The inspections, the waiting periods, the locked doors, it's all part of the ritual.
I let his words sink in, but they only left me with more questions. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of everything. If this thing was being contained, then why was it getting worse now? Suddenly, the phone rang. The sharp, shrill sound cut through the heavy silence of the janitor's closet, making my entire body jolt. My eyes snapped to Jerry, who remained still for a moment, his expression unreadable. He let out a slow breath and gave me a single nod, motioning toward the phone.
Go ahead, answer it.
I hesitated, my hand hovering over the receiver. Every instinct in my body told me not to pick it up, but I didn't have a choice. It's part of the rules. Slowly, I lifted the phone to my ear. A low, static-filled whisper crackled through the line.
Room 208.
The line went dead. I turned to Jerry, my mouth dry. It said, Room 208. Jerry didn't look surprised. Instead, he let out a slow exhale and nodded.
All right, you know the rules. Only one of us can go.
I felt my pulse quicken. I'll do it, I said, before I could second-guess myself. My voice was steadier than I expected. Jerry didn't respond right away. Instead, he raised an eyebrow and folded his arms.
So, what are you waiting for?
He asked, his voice laced with something between curiosity and a test. My stomach dropped for a second, but then it hit me. Rule 1. We have to wait 1 full minute before going out, I said. Jerry's posture relaxed slightly.
Good, just making sure.
He said with an approving smile. The second hand on the clock ticked forward, stretching the silence between us. Finally, Jerry gave me a nod.
All right, you know the drill. Don't waste time, don't linger. As always, stick to the rules.
I nodded and reached for the door handle, but before I pushed it open, Jerry spoke again, this time his voice softer, like a concerned father.
Good luck, kid. Walkie if you need anything.
His voice trailed off like there was more he wanted to say. Instead, he simply gave me one final pat on the shoulder. With that, I stepped out into the dimly lit hallway. The door clicked shut behind me. I began moving briskly through the hallway and up the stairs. When I reached the second floor, I hesitated for a moment, noticing an immediate shift in the air. Almost like the school itself was alive and waiting for me. Although I didn't hear or see anything, I still couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. Every move I made felt like it was being studied. Continuing toward the room 208, I started hearing voices and movement from the surrounding classrooms. But this was different from anything before. It clearly sounded like multiple classes were in session. I heard teachers lecturing and students asking questions. Luckily, whatever was inside seemed to pay me no mind. Upon reaching room 208, the door was wide open, which I found oddly reassuring. Once inside, I began scanning the room, hoping to make this as fast as possible. I was a bit surprised to see everything neatly in order. At least it seemed I wouldn't be doing much cleaning. Nothing looked out of place. So, why was I here? I paced the room again, slower and more thoroughly this time, searching everywhere. Finally, I noticed a pattern. On every desk was a closed textbook, except for one where a single sheet of paper laid instead. I approached the desk, preparing myself for another ominous threat. Written across the paper were 2 words, "Help us," scrawled in jagged, uneven handwriting, as if written in desperation. The ink was smudged in places, almost like whoever had written it had shaky hands or had been in a hurry. A chill crawled up my spine as I stared at the paper. The room suddenly felt much smaller, the air pressing in around me. My mind raced. Who or what would have left this here. Swallowing hard, I tucked the paper into my pocket. Whatever this was, I wasn't leaving it behind. Maybe Jerry would know what it's about. I turned toward the door, my muscles tense, half expecting something or someone to be waiting for me. My breath hitched and I forced myself to move, stepping carefully toward the hallway. Once outside, I exhaled sharply and immediately reached for the key, closing the door and locking it. The moment the lock clicked into place, the feeling of being watched lifted slightly, but not entirely. I turned, making my way back to the stairs, my footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The voices from inside the classrooms were louder this time, as if making absolutely sure I heard them. With every room I passed by, I clearly heard my name or Jerry's being mentioned, followed by muffled words. Although the tone of the voices didn't seem malevolent, I didn't think it'd be a good idea to stop and eavesdrop. I had to keep moving, remembering the rules instructions to ignore all voices. Most likely the school was just trying to trick me. Still, I tried my best to piece together the few bits I was able to pick up on, unable to shake the nagging thought that this might be something different. Maybe something not entirely evil, doing whatever it could to give me a sign. I guess that would explain the note, but none of that mattered if I didn't return safely. I pushed the thought aside as I descended down the stairs to the main floor. Suddenly, my walkie crackled to life, but only the sound of static and radio interference came through. I froze mid-step, tightening my grip on the device. The static was loud, erratic, like something was trying to break through but couldn't quite make it. My heart pounded as I lifted the walkie closer. "Jerry, you there? I'm on my way back." Silence. Then another burst of static. This time, it was different, short, clipped, almost rhythmic. Then, buried beneath the distortion, I heard something. A voice, muffled, broken, like it was struggling to make its way through the interference.
Michael.
The voice cut out abruptly, leaving only dead air. A cold sweat prickled my skin. I pressed the talk button again. "Jerry, are you hearing this? Is that you? Everything okay?" No response. My breath became shallow as I slowly started walking again, my pulse hammering in my ears. The walkie crackled again, slightly clearer this time.
Listen, I don't have much time.
My blood ran cold. "Hello? Who is this?" I whispered, my grip tightening around the walkie. Mustering up some courage, I pressed the talk button again. "Am I speaking with Tony?" The voice responded loud and clear.
Call Father Davis. It's time.
My fingers gripped the walkie so hard my knuckles turned white. The urgency in the voice, the sheer weight of what it was saying, it made my entire body tense. I pressed talk again, trying to steady my breathing. "What do you mean? Time for what? Who are you?" Static crackled in response, dragging out for several seconds before the voice came through again, weaker this time.
Restore the balance. It's waking up. You need to.
The transmission cut out abruptly, replaced by a low, drawn-out hiss of static. I took a shaky step backward, my eyes darting up and down the hallway. Every shadow felt deeper now. Every distant creak in the old building felt heavier. I pressed the talk button one last time. "Hello? Are you still there?" Nothing. Just silence. Something about the voice felt like a guiding presence, and now that it was gone, the eerie sense that it was just me against the school returned once again. As I rounded the last corner on my way back, I could see the closet just down the hall. I thought about trying to call Jerry again. I was a bit worried after being unable to contact him before. I wanted to get some reassurance that he was still there and tell him I was almost back. Then I remembered how the last inspection ended. Anything could happen at any moment, and I didn't want to risk upsetting the school, so I decided not to call him. Maybe I was just being superstitious, but part of me felt as if I'd be showing a lack of respect toward the school. Like, I had the audacity to underestimate its power by assuming I was safe before I actually was. I began moving more cautiously, inching forward with slow, deliberate steps, like I was trying to avoid setting off some sort of trap. With every step, I found a sense of doubt creeping in. Up until now, I hadn't really considered the possibility that I may have been doomed from the start. Maybe Jerry isn't who I think he is, or even the principal who hired me, Sister Agnes. The thought of this unsettled me for a moment. Then, another question surfaced. The one I had been too afraid to ask myself all night. If I tried to leave, would I even be able to? Or was I already trapped here, playing by the rules of something far beyond my understanding? The idea dug into me like a thorn. I could feel my pulse pounding in my throat, my breath quickening despite my best efforts to stay calm. Was I walking further into a trap? Or had the trap already sprung the moment I stepped through the doors of this school? I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to focus. I was within arm's reach of the closet now. Whatever was happening, I had no choice but to see it through. Bolting would solve nothing. I raised my fist and knocked firmly on the door. "Jerry, it's me. Let me in." Almost immediately, the lock clicked, and the door swung open just enough for Jerry to peer out. His eyes darted around the hallway behind me before he finally stepped back, allowing me inside. The door shut behind me with a solid thud, and he locked it again without hesitation.
You all right?
Jerry asked, his tone edged with something close to concern. Instead of answering right away, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the note from room 208. I unfolded it and held it up for him to see. This was on one of the desks. Jerry's had a blank expression as he took the paper, like he was half expecting this to happen, his eyes scanning the jagged writing. "And something else happened," I said. "I heard a voice over the radio, someone trying to warn me. It sounded human. They told me you and I weren't safe anymore, and that I needed to call Father Davis. I tried reaching you, but I got nothing." Jerry's face darkened. He reached for his own walkie, lifting it to his ear before twisting the dial. A few seconds of silence passed, then static hissed through. He pressed the talk button.
"This is Jerry. Who is this?"
Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Slowly, he lowered the walkie from his mouth.
"I heard the voice too, Michael. Father Davis is already on his way."
"Wait, so who was I talking to? What's going on? You called Father Davis?" I asked, my mind spiraling with anxiety. Jerry sighed, rubbing his temples as if debating how much to tell me. Finally, he looked up, his expression more serious than ever.
"I'm sorry all this is happening, Michael. This was never meant to be an ordinary night."
"What's that supposed to mean? What aren't you telling me?" I asked, unable to hide the panic in my voice. Jerry continued.
"After Tony's death, Father Davis filled in for 2 weeks, mainly to assess what exactly we're dealing with and decide the best course of action. During that time, he told me things about this school I never suspected before. St. Augustine's is one of many portals into the spirit world, connecting higher and lower dimensions to our world. According to Father Davis, this is a heavy traffic area. Imagine the school is like a busy international airport for spirits. Some spirits are always traveling, just briefly stopping by. Some have to wait longer. And a few spirits are always here, both good and bad. When the school was built on this land 75 years ago, the portal reopened, awakening an ancient demonic influence. God knows how long this thing was dormant."
Jerry's explanation did nothing to ease my growing fear about my true purpose in being here tonight. "Okay, if Father Davis was able to fill in for Tony, why do you need me?" "I don't really know what's going on," I nervously said, still feeling skeptical of Jerry. He leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly.
"We had to re-establish the original protocol. 2 janitors keeping watch, 1 priest on standby. Father Davis believed it would be bad luck, or possibly seen as blasphemy by the spirits to perform his duties as a priest if he was already serving as a janitor for the night. Also, with someone new, it gave us the chance to see how the negative spirits would react, to gauge how aggressive their behavior would be. They obviously wanted to send a message tonight."
"So I'm just here as part of some experiment?" I said, abruptly interrupting Jerry.
"Just let me finish, kid,"
Jerry said, gently raising his hand.
"We're out of time and had no other option. And besides, you accepted this job. I'm sure you had doubts and noticed the red flags. I certainly did when I started this job. For whatever reason, you still showed up."
I didn't know what to say. Jerry was exactly right. I simply shrugged and nodded for Jerry to continue.
"As I was saying, too many bad spirits are staying longer than they're supposed to, causing the portal to jam up. This lowers the overall vibration of the portal, allowing malevolent forces to exert more control."
"Is that how Tony died? Are you saying some kind of spiritual warfare is taking place?" I asked, trying to comprehend this abrupt overload of information.
"That's what we're trying to prevent from happening. What's going on right now is like a negotiation. This is the 4th time something like this has happened, the first time being when the school opened and every 25 years since then. What happened to Tony is absolutely terrible, but we can't afford to retaliate.
So, how did they stop it before, or come to an agreement?
I just know it's been different each time. Father Davis wouldn't tell me anything else.
You don't think that's strange?
Well, knowing him, not really. He'll be here any minute.
As if on cue, there was a sharp, deliberate knock at the door. A calm voice from the other side.
Father Davis?
Jerry moved toward the door without hesitation and unlocked it, revealing a tall, lean man in a black cassock. He stepped inside, his presence commanding yet somehow quiet. There was a calmness about him, but something else too, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. His smile was polite, but his eyes seemed distant, maybe even a little too calm for everything going on.
You must be Michael,
He said, offering his hand.
I'm Father Davis.
Yeah, I replied, shaking his hand. Nice to meet you. His grip was firm, but not aggressive, just controlled.
Jerry's told me you've handled yourself well tonight. I know it hasn't been easy.
He turned to Jerry and gave a quick nod before speaking again.
We don't have much time. Here's the plan. You two will continue with your final inspection as normal. Stick to the routine, follow the rules. But this time, when it's time to inspect the basement, all three of us are going down together.
Jerry and I shared a quick glance. There was no hesitation. We both knew what needed to be done. We gathered our flashlights and gear before heading out into the dark halls once more. The school seemed quieter than before, but not in a comforting way. More like the calm before a storm. We split up as usual for the final inspection. Jerry took the second floor and cafeteria, while I swept through the first floor and gym. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Too normal. Not a single flickering light, no disembodied whispers, not even the usual creaks from the old wooden beams above. But the silence was oppressive, thick like molasses, and every step I took echoed as if the building were hollowed out. I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched, closely, deliberately. It wasn't paranoia. I could feel it, the kind of stillness that comes right before something awful happens. With every classroom I passed, I half expected the doors to burst open, or a face to appear in the windows. My grip on the flashlight was starting to cramp from how tightly I held it. Then, Jerry's voice crackled through my walkie.
I'm done. Heading down now. I'll meet you by the basement.
Copy that. I'll see you soon, I said, my own voice sounding distant in my ears. By the time I reached the stairwell leading to the basement, my nerves were strung tight enough to snap. And waiting there in the dim hallway, motionless as a statue, was Father Davis. His eyes were already fixed on the door leading below, and for a second, I wondered if he had even moved since we last saw him. Without saying a word, he handed us each a small crucifix. His hand trembled as he passed mine to me.
It's time,
He said, his voice flat and steady, but his eyes, those eyes were full of something, looking more like sadness than fear. Father Davis led the way into the basement, each step slow and deliberate as the three of us descended into the depths of St. Augustine's. The air grew colder with every step, the fluorescent lights above flickering with a low hum that made the silence even more unbearable. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. At the bottom of the stairs, a long hallway stretched out before us. The light was dim, the bulbs overhead casting more shadow than illumination. As we followed Father Davis down the corridor, I noticed the door at the end was already open. It looked like a janitor's closet, almost identical to the one upstairs. Same shelves, same mops and buckets, same chipped linoleum flooring. But there was something off about it. The room was larger than it should have been, and in one corner sat an old, dusty armchair. A cracked mirror leaned against the far wall, and there were a few tattered books stacked beside a rusted lantern. It looked like someone had tried to live here at some point, or something. We stepped inside, and the moment the last foot crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind us. The lights went out. Then came the sounds, first laughter, then layered voices whispering over each other, too many to count. Something rushed past me, brushing my back. I spun around, heart pounding. The air was filled with heavy breathing, inhuman, rapid, always just behind us, but never seen. Father Davis wasted no time. He held his crucifix high and began reciting Latin prayers, slowly at first, but each line grew louder, more forceful. His voice echoed against the walls like he was commanding something to leave. Then he turned to us, eyes wide with urgency.
One of you must offer yourself. It's the only way to restore balance. You will be with the light.
Jerry and I exchanged a look. We were stunned. My body froze. Jerry looked more shocked than I'd ever seen him. He clearly didn't expect this. For a reason I still don't understand, I stepped forward. I felt a weight in my chest. Not fear, but something heavier. I thought of everything Jerry had gone through. 8 years, Tony, all the nights alone. I'll do it, I said. Jerry reached for me.
No, no, let it be me, please!
Father Davis didn't move.
Michael offered first. It's up to him. Are you sure you want to do this?
Yes, I said firmly. Jerry's face fell, his hands trembling. Father Davis looked at me with sorrow, like a man delivering a eulogy. There was something else behind his eyes. Pity. He raised the crucifix and began reciting again, this time blessing me with trembling hands, speaking directly to me in Latin. Then he turned to Jerry and did the same, which struck me as odd. Why bless the one not being sacrificed? Then Father Davis looked skyward, arms raised, voice rising with raw desperation. He was pleading, not just reciting, he was begging for our lives. And then, it all stopped. The voices vanished, the cold disappeared, the lights returned. I was fine. Jerry was fine. We both looked at each other, confused. What the hell just happened? I asked. Father Davis lowered his arms, visibly shaken.
I don't know exactly.
I could see the lie in his eyes. He knew something. He just didn't want to say it. Maybe it was better I didn't know. But the thought of that didn't sit right with me. I pressed him further, flat out asking again. Father Davis, what's happening? He said nothing, already turning his back, motioning us to return upstairs. We made our way back through the school, returning to the janitor's closet. For the first time tonight, it almost felt like walking through a normal school. But Father Davis's coldness replaced the eerie presence that seemed to no longer exist. Father Davis didn't stick around long after that. He appeared to be in a hurry and was trying too hard to hide it. As he was leaving, Father Davis gave us a long, lingering look.
Stay in the janitor's closet for the rest of the shift. Follow the rules as usual. You both did well tonight. Get some rest.
He stopped to turn back around, one last time.
You'll both be commended for your bravery tonight. Thank you.
I felt like that statement had a deeper meaning, but I knew I wouldn't get any further explanation from him. The rest of the night passed without incident. Jerry and I sat together in the janitor's closet, the silence finally feeling less threatening. For the first time, we let our guards down. I leaned back against the wall and looked at him. "Can I ask you something?" I said. Jerry glanced over, nodding. "Why have you stayed here so long? 8 years. Most people wouldn't last one." He scratched his chin and gave a small shrug.
Well, they pay me accordingly. I guess that's why I've stayed.
I watched him for a moment, trying to read the tired lines in his face. "So, is the pay even real?" Jerry chuckled.
Oh yeah, it's real. Direct deposit every Friday, like clockwork. Just some advice, kid. After tonight, don't take their first offer. They'll sweeten the deal.
We both laughed at that, and for a while, we just sat there, trading stories and joking like two guys who hadn't just faced down a nightmare together. There was a strange comfort in it, like maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. The worst was behind us. Or so I thought. Suddenly, something overtook us. A heavy, comforting pressure fell over me like a cozy weighted blanket. It felt so amazing it didn't matter that my vision was blurring. I turned to look at Jerry one last time. He was already fast asleep. Then, darkness. When I woke up, I shot right up, weightless, effortless. I felt different. I looked down. To my horror, I nearly screamed. No arms, no legs, just strands where my feet should be, a wooden handle where my body should be. "Oh my God, what is this?" I was a mop. I had literally transformed into an actual mop, but I was still me, my thoughts intact. Somehow I could still talk. At least I could float about freely. I didn't have arms or legs, nor could I feel them, but it was like I still had them in a weird way. Still, I was a goddamn mop.
Oh my God. Michael, is that you?
"Who else would it be, Jerry?" He had a look of shock and uncertainty I've never seen before. We were both freaking out. Then Jerry's watch beeped.
7:25 p.m. 5 minutes until our shift starts.
Jerry looked at me, eyes wide, trying to convey what words couldn't describe. He knew this was beyond messed up.
We'll figure this out, but for now, focus up. Rule 1. We wait 1 full minute.
I groaned. Oh, sure, wait a full minute. I'm only a broomstick with hair. Jerry gave me a stern, serious look. He didn't know what was happening either. All we knew was that we were still at St. Augustine's, conveniently awakening just in time for our next shift. We agreed to follow the rules. It didn't seem we had much choice. We both fell quiet. The minute passed and we prepared for inspection.
Let's stick together.
He said, turning toward me, unable to hide the growing smirk on his face.
Sorry, no pun intended.
Suddenly, a knock, and the door unlocked. Father Davis walked in, slow and solemn. He saw me, stopped. His expression was unreadable.
I'm so sorry, but both of you are bound here now. 25 years. That's the deal that was made this time.
He quickly made his way out of the school. 25 years. For 25 years, I would be a mop, but I was a mop with responsibilities. We were going to find a way out of this mess, one way or another. But right now, it was time to go to work. I looked at Jerry. Ready, partner?
Ready.